Hey boys and girls, welcome back to Stories with Sally. Today I want to share a book with you that I read to my class every year at the beginning of the year. And I think you'll probably figure out why after I finish reading this story. Today I want to share with you Miss Nelson is Missing. That is the title. The author is Harry Allard. And the illustrator is James Marshall. Remember, the author writes the story and the illustrator draws the pictures. Miss Nelson is Missing. And we have the title page and the copyright page. And boys and girls, this is a fiction story, so this did not actually happen. It's a made-up story. It is fiction. The kids in room 207 were misbehaving again. Spitballs stuck to the ceiling. Paper planes whizzed through the air. They were the worst behaved class in the whole school. "Now settle down," said Miss Nelson in a sweet voice, but the class would not settle down. They whispered and giggled. They squirmed and made faces. They were even rude during story hour, and they always refused to do their lessons. "Something will have to be done," said Miss Nelson. The next morning, Miss Nelson did not come to school. "Wow!" yelled the kids. "Now we can really act up." They began to make more spitballs and paper planes. "Today, let's just be terrible," they said. "Not so fast," hissed an unpleasant voice. A woman in an ugly black dress stood before them. "I am your new teacher, Miss Viola Swamp," and she rapped the desk with her ruler. "Where is Miss Nelson?" asked the kids. "Never mind that," snapped Miss Swamp. "Open those math books." Miss Nelson's kids did as they were told. They could see that Miss Swamp was a real witch. She meant business. Right away, she put them to work, and she loaded them down with homework. "We'll have no story hour today," said Miss Swamp. "Keep your mouths shut," said Miss Swamp. "Sit perfectly still," said Miss Swamp. "And if you misbehave, you'll be sorry," said Miss Swamp. Days went by, and there was no sign of Miss Nelson. The kids missed Miss Nelson. "Maybe we should try to find her," they said. Some of them went to the police. Detective McSmog was assigned to the case. He listened to their story. He scratched his chin. He said. I think Miss Nelson is missing." Detective McSmog would not be much help. kids went to Miss Nelson's house. The shades were tightly drawn and no one answered the door. In fact, the only person they did see was the wicked Miss Viola Swamp coming up the street. If she sees us, she'll give us more homework. They got away just in time. Maybe something terrible happened to Miss Nelson. Maybe she was gobbled up by a shark, said one of the kids, but that didn't seem likely. Maybe Miss Nelson went to Mars, said another kid, but that didn't seem likely either. I know, exclaimed one know-it-all. Maybe Miss Nelson's car was carried off by a swarm of angry butterflies. But that was the least likely of all. The kids in room 207 became very discouraged. It seemed that Miss Nelson was never coming back, and they would be stuck with Miss Viola Swamp forever. They heard footsteps in the hall. "Here comes the witch," they whispered. "Hello, children," someone said in a sweet voice. It was Miss Nelson. "Did you miss me?" she asked. "We certainly did," cried all the kids. "Where were you?" "That's my little secret," said Miss Nelson. "How about a story hour?" "Oh, yes," cried the kids. Miss Nelson noticed that during story hour, no one was rude or silly. "What brought about this lovely change?" she asked. "That's our little secret," said the kids. Back home, Miss Nelson took off her coat and hung it in the closet, right next to an ugly black dress. When it was time for bed, she sang a little song. "I'll never tell," she said to herself with a smile. P.S. Detective McSmog is working on a new case. He is now looking for Miss Viola Swamp. Boys and girls, we have been talking about characters and setting and plot. And today, I want to first talk about the setting of this story. So we know that in this story, they begin at school. So part of the setting is the school. And then the police station. Some of the kids go to the police station because they want to try to find Miss Nelson. So the police station is part of the setting. And also Miss Nelson's house. That's also part of the setting. So 3 different places are part of the setting in this story. Remember, the setting is where the story takes place. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about the plot of a story. And the plot of a story, that is the problem and solution and includes the sequence of events in a story. So the problem in this story is that the kids in Miss Nelson's class are misbehaving and they won't listen to Miss Nelson. So that's the problem. And then to add to the problem, the big part of the problem is that Miss Nelson disappears and they're stuck with Miss Viola Swamp. who was not a very nice teacher. So that's the problem. Now the solution, they go through some different events, but finally at the end, the solution is that Miss Nelson comes back to be their teacher. So she returns. So that's the solution, and that's all part of the plot of the story. Now the characters, when we think about the characters in this story, we of course have Miss Nelson, the teacher, and we have Miss Viola Swamp, who comes in to take over when Miss Nelson disappears, and we have all the kids in her class, and we have Detective McSmog. So those are all the characters in the story. Now, for the takeaway, I want to introduce you to something. This is called a Venn diagram, and I made this myself. But as you can see on this Venn diagram, it's really just two big circles that overlap, and above it, I wrote Miss Nelson, and then I wrote Miss Swamp, and for the section that overlapped, I wrote the word both. A Venn diagram is used to compare and contrast things. And when we compare things, we think about how they are alike. And when we contrast things, we think about how they are different. And a Venn diagram is a great way to compare and contrast. So what I want you to do, and I have an example for you, but I want you to create your own Venn diagram. All you need is a piece of paper and a crayon or a pencil, whatever you have, and just draw two big circles, and they don't have to be perfect. Mine aren't perfect, and make sure they overlap, and you can write Miss Nelson above one, Miss Swamp above the other, and then both for the section that's together. And I put some examples of how you would fill this out. But if you look, so Miss Nelson is very sweet. That's something that's different about Miss Nelson than Miss Swamp. Miss Swamp is not sweet. So that's something about Miss Swamp that is different than Miss Nelson. But what they have in common is that they are both teachers. And that's why I wrote teachers in the middle under both. And I think that you could add to it, and you could fill these circles up with all kinds of descriptions of adjectives, words that describe about Miss Nelson and Miss Swamp, and then things that are the same about them. So that is my takeaway today, is creating a Venn diagram to compare and contrast characters. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.